Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Player's Take, episode 158. I'm your host, Justin DeSimone, joined by my co host. Someday he'll make Diamond in League of Legends, Montrell Rice.
Hey, what's up? Excuse the
How's it
shitty
going, man?
mic.
Yeah,
I'm
excuse
not.
the audio this week. Montrell got trapped outside of his place because
Yeah,
of an ice storm. So he sounds okay, though. I think it's doable.
yeah. So yeah, we had an unexpected ice. Well, apparently, according to Justin, it was
Yeah, I mean,
expected.
if you looked at your weather app ever in the last week, you would have known that it was going to happen today. But, it's okay. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering why they sent us home kind of early yesterday.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's all good. Unfortunately, yeah, I just haven't been playing too many games. I had work just been like not stressful,
Right.
but I just been doing a lot of stuff. So when I come home, I don't want to play something that I have to really think about. Well, I do have to think about it, but like I don't know, single player
Yeah.
concentration is way different from multiplayer concentration. So I like to
Well,
just jump in and do instant action
yeah.
and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get to what you've been
yeah.
playing, I guess. But Montreal, so there's been a lot of discussions happening this week. Elden Ring's coming out tomorrow. Which there's like we have like literally four topics at the bottom of the fucking document centered around Elden Ring and everything that we'll get to. But I wanted to talk about this though. This was kind of a minor thing I saw on the timeline that kind of piqued my interest, and I started looking into it, and I was surprised. I actually hadn't thought about this in a while, and I was surprised by what I had found. Was Sony is the only publisher that I can see right now that is consistently charging $70 for their PS5 games. And that is becoming a permanent fixture for them now with Gran Turismo and all the bullshit they're pulling with Horizon on PS5. And then I'm sure God of War will be 70 as well on PlayStation 5 and everything going forward. But I was looking around and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, dude, like somebody pointed out that like no one else is really charging 70 for their games. And to be honest, I started looking at pricing, and it's like, yeah, that's actually true, dude. Like even like Call of Duty and Battlefield and most of these like pretty much all third party games are still 60 even on PS5, like the native
Mm,
PS5 version of the game. And even games that I think aren't coming out, like aren't even coming out on last gen anymore, like PS4 and Xbox One, like Deathloop and stuff, that was 60. Like they're all 60. Like Valhalla was 60, I think. Well, that was last year. No, thinking about it, or 2 years ago, year and a half ago. I don't remember. But Madden's been was 60 this past year. I think NBA 2K was also 60. FIFA was 60. So it's kind of interesting to note that the industry, like before the console was coming out, you and I had talked about this like pricing on games and that they were going to go up to 70, and um there was really no way around that. Like it was just going to happen. And it's funny that we're a year and a half in now to the new console life cycle, and that hasn't really happened. It's like Sony's trying to force it and they're doing it themselves, but no one's really following them. And I find that to be strange. What do you think about that?
I think the main reason is because a lot of people can't get their hands on new consoles, and the ones that do,
Hmm.
um, I don't think the cost is justifiable to go up to 60. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of those games you mentioned like aren't really, in my opinion, like especially Battlefield, and I'm a Battlefield fan, so Call of Duty fans will get mad at me when I say I don't think Call of Duty is worth $70. I don't think the new Battlefield is worth $60 or $70 rather. Shit, it's not even worth 60 to be honest with you. Um,
Yeah.
uh, and I don't think I think I bought Halo Infinite for $60. I did. It was 59.99.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Microsoft's not doing 70 for their
yeah.
stuff yet.
So I did buy Halo Infinite for $60, and on top of that, from Microsoft, their games are both on PC and Xbox. So if I buy it on my Xbox, I can play it on my PC, and
Hmm.
vice versa.
Right.
Um, so I think Sony's doing it because I'm probably going to talk about later on. They can get away with it. They're Sony. They can do no wrong in the industry's eyes right now. They
Yeah.
are, unfortunately, I think they're getting to that status where they are going to be the Apple of video games, where they can do whatever the fuck they want to do, and people will justify it because it's Sony. Like people justify certain shit with Apple, and
Hmm.
they justify it because it's Apple. You know,
Yeah.
proprietary equipment and unnecessary things that you have to buy to do
They don't
things and
sell
everything.
you the fucking power cable with the fucking phone
Exactly.
that you
Yep.
buy.
And people will justify, well, you brought the
Oh.
open, right? And it's like, what if I was a new person switching over? You know, so it's little shit like that. And even with their shells, right? Like with their PS5 shells, they're proprietary. They're trying to get a, well, they actually are going after people who are making third-party shells for their PS5s. So I
Hmm.
mean, they're trying to really control everything, even on their online purchasing.
Yeah.
Like you can go from the website. You have to go directly to the website now for some things, for most things, except for the actual PS5 itself. Um, so while I'm glad it's getting streamlined for easier access for people to purchase it, it's also getting really, really toxic in my opinion. So
Hmm.
I'm actually not surprised. I'm actually surprised. I'm actually not surprised at the pricing. I'm surprised that someone pointed it out. But
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that no one's not talking about it. I'm not surprised
Yeah.
about that at all.
Do you think it centers around the perception of worth though, or is it just like is it some fear, like PR fear from like EA and Activision that they just don't think they can get away with it for some reason? Because I just find it weird. Like these companies are greedy as hell. That any opportunity that they get to make extra money is they usually take, and this feels like an easy one to just do it. You know, like I
I think
think
it's all
Sony's setting the
encompassing.
standard, right? So.
Yeah, I think it's all encompassing. Right now is I think it's a super PR move, like not to do it. I mean, you look at if they charge $70 for Madden, right? I'm not a Madden
Hmm.
player, so I'm not going to sit here and say what it is worth. I'm just going to use it as an example. So let's say, from what I know of the past Maddens, so let's just say it's Madden like what was the last one I played? 2012, right? And let's just say hypothetically that one was like, you know, $70, and then 13 comes out and it isn't a new console, but like nothing changed. How would I justify? Like, I would kind of be upset if it was like $70 after that.
Hmm.
And I'm like, you guys didn't add anything new to it. It's still Madden Ultimate Team on here. Like, there's still no franchise mode. There's still the same 30 faces. Like, how can you justify this $30 or this extra $10 hike? Um, I think honestly, and I think 2K probably has a little bit more leeway to go $70, because they actually
Hmm.
do add stuff every year. I haven't played it for a couple years, but from what I know and from what I heard, they add stuff every year to their My Player and everything of that nature. It's just behind paywalls and the VC points, but they do add
Hmm.
stuff. Um, so does MLB The Show. Uh,
Oh, you know what, dude? I was actually wrong about this. So I didn't look at Madden specifically. The base price of Madden is 70.
oh
They
shit.
they did
Okay.
charge. They did charge. Okay, so a couple companies are doing this. It isn't just Sony, but
Okay.
um let's see NBA, what is it? 2K22.
Yeah, I thought 2K was charging 70, but I don't know. I haven't followed it in a while. I know they have
Yeah,
their
so
different
maybe all the
tiers.
sports game did. Yeah, they did. Yeah, no, it was 70 on wow, okay. So they did it. So okay, so it isn't just Sony. It's a few games here and there. This is interesting. This is really weird because the reason I was looking at it is I was looking at like Elden Ring. Like Elden Ring's not 70. And I was like, really? Like why? Like that's weird, you know? It is on PS4 and Xbox One, I think, but um it's not. And then what else was I looking at? I think Stranger Paradise coming out, I think that's only 60 as well. um and there's a few games coming out. Oh, Dying Light was only 60 as well. So I was like,
Hmm.
it's kind of weird. It was kind of weird. It was just weirding me out. I was like, that's interesting. So I don't know. I don't know if there's like much to take away from this. Like, a lot of what we're saying is just speculation. Like we don't know for sure, but it is an interesting thing to note, and it is actually something I'm probably going to start monitoring with new game releases going forward to kind of see how the industry moves in this regard. I wasn't really thinking about it much, but you know, it is
Yeah,
it is interesting to note.
yeah, I think it is. I don't know. I don't know. Now that you said that, like the sports games, I kind of take back everything I said. Um, So I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Because I
I
would have
mean,
thought too, like they are the first
yeah.
ones to do.
Yeah.
They would be the first ones to do that. But sports games to me always have tiers, like especially 2K. There's always the gold edition or the platinum edition or some shit like that.
Hmm.
Um, and then Call of Duty is the same way. It has like the tiers you can buy. I think a lot of games do have tiers, but like base being $70 is wild to
Yeah.
me.
Actually, COD, yeah, COD was 70 as well. Vanguard
Okay.
was 70. Was Battlefield 70?
Yeah,
Battlefield. There's
Battlefield. I want to say Battlefield was 100% 70.
2042. Yeah. Let's see. Um it looks like they had a gold edition at 90. No, 100. And then no, it says 59.99 on Steam.
What about PS5? I could have swore I paid 70 for that game.
Yeah, hold on. Oh, it is 70 on PS5. That's weird. It's 70 on PS5 but 60 on PC. See, this is the kind of fuckery I don't understand. Like what, like wouldn't you think you'd charge more on PC? Like isn't that the platform that has the most like potential for a lot of these games? That's weird. Yeah, it's okay. So I guess I didn't look deeply enough into this, but it's still
I still
weird though that games like Dying Light 2 and Elden Ring are 60, you know. That is interesting that some third party devs are not charging more.
Yeah, I still stand by my thing that I think Sony is moving towards that. They're able to do whatever they want to do. And I want to say I think it is 70 on is it 70 on Xbox? You know what?
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be 70 on Xbox. You can
No,
check
I think the thing that hit me off on it is that Xbox is not charging 70 for their first party games yet.
because
Um
and I think they're not doing it for like Battlefield stuff too because I think they have that smart delivery.
Delivery. Yeah.
So when you go from Xbox One, it automatically, you know, goes to Xbox Series X when you change over
Mhm.
to the Series X. So yeah,
Yeah.
Sony's the only one doing it, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, cuz they have different versions of the same fucking game on different consoles.
Yeah.
So which is an annoying, very annoying thing from them. So I don't know. It's something we'll monitor for sure. Yeah, I think the thing to monitor really is when does Xbox start charging 70 for their first party games? You know, because
I think
yeah, Halo was 60. So
when they finally put the Xbox One to rest.
yeah, yeah, I guess that makes sense when they stop making first party exclusives for the Xbox One.
Yeah, because right now that smart delivery, it was designed for everyone in the Xbox ecosystem to play, all
Yeah.
their first party games.
Hmm.
So
Word. All right. Montrell, let's get into the show proper. So, for those of you who haven't listened before, this is our weekly show where we talk about video games, video game news, and other topics pertaining to video games. We post at 6 a.m. Central Time on Fridays on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and your favorite podcast app of choice. And if you'd like to send us questions, you can do so at The Players Take on Twitter, or you can send us an email to theplayerstake01@gmail.com. All right, Montreal, let's get into what we've been playing, which, as you said, is not very much. You said just League pre-show. And so I was going to comment on this. I kind of wanted to wait until we got here. But you saying, like, you don't need to think much when you're playing League. And I understand what you mean. Because as much as the game does require a lot of thought and is a very deep game and a very fast game, that you need to be on your feet for. You've played it so much though that I think you're capable of playing it without exerting extreme amounts of like effort, at this
yeah,
point.
yeah, and the single player games I tend to play are like, um, action combat oriented games, and they're pretty difficult, or I don't want to say like hard, but they're pretty like you have to master them. And if you stop playing them for a couple weeks, you have to learn how to master the game again. So Sifu is one of those games, like Dark Souls is one of those games, Sekiro is one of those games. Um, Even though you know the basics, it's still like hard to get, not hard to get back into, but it still takes a couple of tries and concentration to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I'm just not in the headspace when I'm coming home. Like I'm just instantly jumping on the game because I'm getting home super late. Because over the last couple of weeks, days, I have an hour commute. But God forbid,
Mm,
like an accident happens, then it's like an hour and a half, you know.
mm-hmm,
So
mm.
yeah, I just been instantly coming home, like cleaning up, eating, playing a couple games, getting on Discord with y'all, and then you know, go to bed or whatever. And I think that's the main reason too. I just like getting on Discord with y'all and talking to shit.
Yeah,
So
me too. I've been having the same problem. Is like I'm not playing single player because I want to hang out with you guys, but
yeah,
I don't want to play something like Horizon when I'm on Discord. Like I want to be able to pay attention to it and like
yeah,
give it my
exactly.
full attention.
Yep.
And yeah, until we stop getting on Discord every night, like I'm just having trouble with it. So
I mean, I
um
might take a page from your book and just some days maybe just not get on to like late at night or whatever. Like maybe like the last
mhm.
hour, jump on and say hi to y'all for like an hour, and then
Yeah.
just jump off.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what I did, yeah, because yesterday I did play Lost Ark all day yesterday, but I didn't actually get on Discord because I was
Hmm.
like, I don't know, I just kind of didn't like, I wanted to like kind of like, I don't know if wean myself off is the right phrase for this, but like, get off the Discord for a night and just like kind of just chill and like listen to some podcasts and while I'm playing and kind of like remember what it feels like to play a game when I'm not on Discord with everybody.
Yeah.
So because I think this weekend I'm going to actually play some shit that is like single player, like actually dive into something. Like maybe I think I'm gonna get Elden Ring tomorrow,
Okay.
and jump into that, or Horizon, or both. Or I'll play more Pokemon. I don't know. I'm definitely gonna play Lost Ark too. So I have a pack weekend already in my head. But all I've been playing really is Lost Ark, for the most part.
Hmm.
I've played a little bit more Pokemon, and what I will say about Pokemon, is like, I don't feel too much differently from how I felt last week. The only thing I want to add though is that this game is I don't understand how this game got the scores it got. This is kind of related to the discussion we're gonna have later about reviewers and stuff. Is like I remember, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Montreal, when this came out a month ago, like this game was getting like 9.5s, nines, and all that shit. Like it was getting crazy hype.
Yeah, it got
Um,
I think the lowest I saw was like a 7, but I did
yeah.
see a lot of eights and a lot of nines. I don't think I saw a 10, but I
I
did
didn't
see a lot of
see.
eights.
I think I saw one or two tens, but it wasn't from like super reputable outlets. But I did
Okay.
see some 9.5s and stuff, and I'm just like, the more I'm like playing the game, and I'm like running around, and I'm like, how did this game get a 9.5, dude? Like it's fine, it's fun, it is a breath of fresh air for Pokemon, but like this is not like an amazing video game by any stretch of the imagination. And the open world in this game is, dude, it's like, it honestly feels like, it reminds me of like, I'm trying to think of a game. It kind of reminds me of like Bug Snacks, which is weird to say. But in Bug Snacks, like you have all these little bugs running around in the environments they live in, but
Hmm.
they're not like super alive. They do certain things, and that's really all they do. And this Pokemon game is similar in that regard, where there's tons of Pokemon around. You're running by Pokemon constantly when you're out in the wild running around, but they're not like they're not that like alive. Like if you just sit there and watch them, they just kind of like path back and forth for the most part, and then occasionally they'll let out like like a Pokemon cry or something. They'll like roar or something like that, and then they'll just keep walking back and forth. It's like they're not even really interacting with each other very much. There's not a whole like this isn't these environments aren't like alive, in the way that like Monster Hunter World felt alive. It's not a
Yeah.
fair comparison. Obviously,
Yeah.
they're different games, but the thing is, a game like this, I think if they make a Pokemon Legends 2, like in a sequel to this game in a different region or something. I think that's the evolution I really want to see from it, is that they focus more on making the game feel like the Pokemon feel like they're really alive, living in this world. Because this game just doesn't have that. It feels kind of dead, honestly. And the NPCs are a really good example too, where like the NPCs ain't doing shit in this game, man. Like they're just sitting around. You go talk to them, they say the same shit. they're not really doing. They're not even really pathing around the villages they're in. They're just kind of standing around, and there's not a lot going on unless you have a quest to get from somebody. Like there's just really not much going on. It's like the core gameplay loop is fun, and that's the reason I'm still playing. But it's not an incredible game by any stretch of the imagination. Like it's I don't understand how it got the scores it got, because like people's expectations have got to be at the absolute bottom of the fucking barrel for what a Pokemon game is that isn't like a mainline game. Because yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know, I don't get it. It's like the more I play it, the more I'm like, I mean, it's like it's cool and all, but it's just it feels like a game somebody made that's like a mod, of something, and like it's like kind of cool, but like you can tell they're not an experienced developer, because like all the everything in the game just does like really basic stuff. It's like nothing like really interesting is happening, and that's just what happens in this game. It's just not super intriguing. And I think the thing that I'm getting annoyed about with it is it's exciting to run around and like find, like I told you last week, I found a chimchar early, and I actually this week I ran into a Turtwig, which is the grass starter for Gen 4.
Hmm.
And I got really fucking excited when that happened again. Like that was a really exciting moment. But like I'd say 90% of the time running around, you're just seeing the same like 10 or 15 Pokemon for the most part running around. And it's like it reminds me of running around in the main games, where it's the same thing. You'll see 10 or 15 Pokemon in specific areas or two, and the super rare ones are very specific to find, and they're in very specific locations. So if you're not following a guide, you're oftentimes not going to run into them. And that's kind of what this game is starting to feel like a little bit, is like you kind of need to know where to go to find certain Pokemon.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it's, I still recommend it for sure for people who are into Pokemon, and even for you, like, to try it out. I mean, you said you bought it already, so um, you know, I still recommend you try it out. But I just want to say, like, this game's not a 10. It's definitely not a 10. So, and then Lost Ark. This is the game I've been playing this, dude. I've been playing this a lot. I think I'm starting to hit my cooldown moment with it. I think I'm like I want to I'm really trying to, cuz right now I'm item level 540. That's what I got to last night. And that is like I'm 60 item levels away from tier 2. So I'm trying to get to tier 2. I'm trying to clear out main quests, main story quests, so that I can move on to tier 2 regions and tier 2 content. And like once I get there, I'll be able to kind of put the game down a little bit and play more on like a daily, every other day kind of basis. A
Hmm.
little bit or more like when I feel like it kind of thing, and not feel obligated to play so much. Um, it's just the game has so much fucking content, man. It's bonkers. Like there's just so much to do in this game. Um, and I've been playing it for like over 2 weeks now, and I'm still not anywhere near being done really with all the content. So
Okay.
this is a really robust game. If you're looking for something long term that can keep you occupied for a long period of time, like I'm talking months, this is definitely the game. It's free as well, which is a huge bonus for those of you who are short on game budgets. So yeah, it's a fun game. I'm enjoying it, but I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be like obsessed with it, if I'm even there anymore. I might already be out of that window at this point. So, um, so yeah, that's all I've been playing. All right, Macho. Let's move into the news. We got a few news stories, and then, like I said, we got some topics to cover. So, first story, this one hurts me, is Square Enix came out and released financial results for the first 3 quarters of its 2022 fiscal year, and they said that Guardians of the Galaxy undershot their sales expectations. And all I want to say about this is that I think Square Enix secretly hates Eidos and does not want them to succeed, because the same thing happened with Deus Ex Mankind Divided, and Human Revolution. And those all of these games didn't succeed because of Square Enix, particularly Guardians of the Galaxy and Mankind Divided. The pre-order campaign and the marketing campaign for Mankind Divided was one of the worst things I have ever seen a game company do to market a game. They turned so many people off from that game. It is criminal what they did to that game. They like destroyed it. They like torpedoed its chance of success. And then Guardians of the Galaxy, that wasn't as bad, but they just didn't market it enough, and then what they did market was bad. Like they didn't show why the game is good. They like I remember what they showed of it, and we were super meh on it, like. And they had a game that kind of looks similar to Avengers, which was one of the biggest flops we've ever seen. And they didn't do anything to like disillusion people from that, to like convince them that this is something different. So yeah, it's just it is what it is.
Well, I think Square has unrealistic expectations for all their Western games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think because this is gonna sound fucking funny, but I think because they think ooh, guns, Western audience, it's gonna sell well, just like Call of Duty does. Like I think that's how they really think viewpoint or view us, or
Yeah.
like oh, it has like a a movie a movie esque Last of Us type vibe or whatever the fuck, right? The reason
Mm-hmm.
I say that is because they did the same thing to Crystal Dynamics,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
with Tomb Raider. Tomb
Yep.
Raider, the original Tomb Raider is actually the not the original Tomb Raider. I'm sorry, the Tomb Raider, uh, the
The
remake.
second one, the second remake, right?
Yeah, the
Rise of the
second
Tomb
remake.
Raider.
Yeah, Rise of the Tomb. I can't think of the name. I know it's Rise, Shadow, and then another
I
one.
think it's Rise of the Tomb Raider. The third one's Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Okay, so Rise is there are three of them actually came out. So it's Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, and then Shadow of
Shadow.
the
Yeah.
Tomb. Yeah. So Tomb Raider, that one, I think that came out in like 2015, 2013, maybe. Maybe Lord, it had to be like 2013. Yeah, I think it was
Yeah, it was
2013.
2013.
Um, that's actually the best selling Tomb Raider in the entire series.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and or actually, I think Rise of the Tomb Raider is actually the best selling one.
No, it
It,
can't be. There's no way. Because I know where you're going with this, because they screwed Rise of the Tomb Raider, the second one. That one came out in 2015. And remember, they launched it the same day Fallout 4 came out.
okay. Um, yeah, because I'm trying to see which one it is, but all I know is one of the newer Tomb Raiders are the best ones, and the other ones actually sold very well as well. Like they sold like 5 million or 6 million or something like that. So they didn't flop in the essence of what we would think a flop is for a single player game. But
Yeah.
they, Tomb Raider in Square's eyes, they did flop, and it's like,
Yeah,
um,
14.5 million copies as of October 2021. The first Tomb Raider remade game, the 2013 game.
okay,
Um, yeah,
yeah, yep. Um, Yeah, the reboot sold 11 million, and I can't see the numbers for the other one, unfortunately, for Rise of the Tomb Raider. Um,
yeah.
but
Shadow looks like sold almost 9 million, and then Rise, I'm not sure. They might not have ever released numbers for it because it was so bad.
okay, yeah,
Yeah,
but Shadow, what you said, 9 million for Shadow, right?
yeah, yep.
And I think they considered that a flop. Like they're like, oh, this is not good enough for us.
Yeah, which is insane. I mean, that's like lifetime sales numbers. So maybe the first few weeks were bad, and it had a long tail or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, that's crazy. Actually, dude, looking at Rise, it looks like it sold almost 12 million lifetime as well. So that's probably another game that had like a long tail and a lot of people bought it. Who knows how much those were sold at, like how much money those were sold at too, the costs. So I don't know, but
Well, I know
Square,
Rise was one of those ones where it sold. It was exclusive to Xbox for a while, time
yep.
exclusive. Then once it got released everywhere, it started selling well. And yeah, so like yeah, it sold 11.8 million. Rise did, and then Shadow sold 8.9 million. I still don't care if it was like even if it's at the tail end of a game's life cycle, right? And it sold a million copies. That's still a million players that showed some kind of interest in the game, whether it was $10 or whether it was $50. Um, I still think that's a lucrative market. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
these sales did come in at the middle of the life cycle of the game, not necessarily at the end, but the middle of the life cycle. Uh,
Yeah.
and they're pretty standard games. They're like 7.5, eights as far as ratings from player critics. Or I don't really go by critical like media critics, but like player ratings. I believe they're like seven or eights on Metacritic for player ratings. So I mean, these are relatively good games. They have a good story. They have good mechanics and everything like that. And Square just like Nas is a flop. And I didn't play Guardians of the Galaxy. I do have it though. I did not play it. I did. What I want to mention is I do see. I saw it weird that Guardians of the Galaxy came out, and then maybe like 2 weeks later, it was already selling at half off. It was the weirdest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It hasn't. It wasn't even out like for a month yet, and it was already selling like half
Yeah, I
off.
mean it's a bad sign for games like Battlefield did that. Yeah, that happens. It happens actually more often than you think
Yeah,
with
but
a
the
lot of
thing
these
is,
games.
Guardians of the Galaxy was getting rave reviews. Everybody that played
Yep.
it was like, "Yo, this game is good." Even you played it, it said it's good. DJ told me like, "Yo, you got to play this game. It's so fucking good."
Hmm.
And everyone was saying that because it was a surprise. It was actually a surprise hit, and I think it was one of those things where even me and you, we looked at the game, we're like, "Ugh, what the fuck is this? Like, this looks terrible."
Yeah.
Um, and I really think Square forced them to show that game off and everything of that nature. Square just likes killing their games for some reason, unless it's like Final Fantasy. Like
Yeah, I
I
just
don't.
don't get it. The dude, their marketing department's just bad. Like
Yeah.
like they're just not good at their job because yeah, I don't understand how you make a game like Guardians of the Galaxy like look so bad. It like they really did. They didn't make it look appealing and when it came out when the game came out and reviews were super positive, I was really shocked by that, but then I played it myself and I'm like, dude, this game's awesome. Like it's like I don't. It's like, dude, it's criminal that the game undersold. Whatever their expectations are probably unreasonable as usual. But um, I I I don't know. Like, if we don't get another one of these games because this undersold expectations, I mean, maybe that means we get Deus Ex. So maybe I get my way, but at the same time, it would still be a shame because like I think there's a really cool franchise here for Square and Eidos to explore. And I think there should be another game here. So, and I think people want that too. And honestly, I think a sequel could be really successful in this case because I think word of mouth of the first game would really push interest in a next like a second installment. Honestly,
Yeah, we
so
see that in a lot of games, like word of mouth. The first game really doesn't sell that well, but word of mouth pushes it to next level, and then the next game comes out, and
hmm
then it sells like hotcakes. Um, I want to say Fallout 3 was one of those games.
yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, Fallout 3 to Fallout 4. I mean, I played New Vegas, but a lot of people didn't like New Vegas. But yeah, and it's really weird. I'm thinking about it now. It's not just Western games. I don't think they know how to advertise a lot of their mainline non-RPG um games, right? Like
hmm
they did a good job with like Triangle Strategy, I think, in
hmm
Project in Octopath.
Octopath, yeah.
I think they did a good job because the gameplay kind of speaks for itself. I think they're really keen on like gameplay. The only thing they don't really do it with, right, is like Final Fantasy and
Story based games, yeah.
story-based games like Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, right? They don't really they kind of wait until they do because the franchises are so popular that they don't really have to show gameplay. But then I look at games like Babylon's Fall, right? And that's
hmm
the reason I'm having they show gameplay of it, but they don't show the correct gameplay. They did the same shit with Guardians of the Galaxy. They showed
Yeah.
gameplay of it, but they didn't show
They
the
show a
cor-
really lengthy part of the game in Guardian's case that was a really not boring section, but probably one of the most boring sections though of the game.
exactly. It didn't
You know,
show the nuance of the game, like when you're actually the
like
player
dude,
controlling the character. They didn't
yeah,
show that, and
yeah,
that I think that speaks a lot to actually show what the potential of the player is to do, not just showing the developers playing the game, because the developers have a certain way of playing the game that they want everyone to play the game. But then when an actual player plays it, because I say this because I have a really strange hope for Babylon's Fall. I think that game's going to surprise a lot of people, even including myself. I've been surprisingly negative of it, but it was just that one snippet I saw. I was like, okay, this game can have some kind of potential, and they're releasing a demo for it tomorrow, and I'm going to play the demo. But then the gameplay they show with the demo that they're showing, the little snippet of the gameplay was ass. I'm
Hmm.
like, what the fuck is
Yeah,
this? Like, so it's like they just really don't know how to show off their games, and I think
yeah.
they get really lucky with Final Fantasy because it's like
It's an
in Kingdom
established
Hearts
IP.
because it's
Yeah.
established IP and it's like hype
Well,
culture.
to be fair with Kingdom Hearts, they actually do market Kingdom Hearts really well. Like, dude, they those trailers are good. Like, Kingdom
Yeah.
Hearts trailers are generally really good. Like, people get super fucking hype, including us. Like, I've definitely fallen for them. In Guardian's case, I'm thinking of sections of the game that they didn't show. Like, dude, the part they showed, no offense to them, but like, it's one of the most like not. It's not like again, it's not a bad part of the game. It's just compared to the rest of the game, there's so much more exciting shit they could have shown. They could have shown the ship, like you being on the ship. They could have shown like snippet, like done like a montage where they showed like there's a couple few parts of the game where you do ship combat where you control the ship. They
Hmm.
could have shown that shit to get people really hyped. They could have shown some of the dialogue moments. They could have shown some of the more shocking, like just like quickly shown like some of the more like shocking moments in the cockpit when you're like flying to a new destination and some crazy shit happens the second you arrive. Things like that, dude. Like, and they didn't show any of that. They just showed like a 30-minute segment of the game where you're just running around a really like kind of, no offense, ugly looking environment. I mean, it's not. It's like it's like a really drab environment. It's not super interesting. It is cool looking, but it's like it's not the most exciting place you go, like straight up
Hmm.
in the game. And I don't know why. I think they wanted to avoid spoilers like for the story. I think that was very important, which I do appreciate to some degree, but at the same time you got to be able to hook people. And I think they needed to know that this game was going to be kind of compared to Avengers even if it was unfair to do so. And I think they needed to do more to like show that that wasn't what the game was.
Yeah, and then that's
Um,
another thing too we have to consider. This is coming off of the blunder of the Avengers, so it's like, um, unfortunately, I think Idols was doomed to fail. Like
mhm,
this was just one of those things where they got handed actually a good card, I think, and because another team, unfortunately, Crystal Dynamics, another team failed at that card, which I don't even think, to be honest with you, I don't even think that was all Crystal Dynamics' fault. I
oh,
really
absolutely
think,
not.
I really think, Square had a hand in that and pushing all this product into the game and just really weird shit. And yeah, I don't know, man. Square, for them to have the IPs they have, they're really bad at marketing them. I even say some of the Japanese ones they're really bad at marketing, and I think it's just pure hype culture. Like when they
Mhm.
show, if you think about it, right? uh, let's say Front Mission. I think that's a perfect example.
Yeah,
So they
yeah.
showed Front Mission at at the direct, and if people didn't know what Front Mission was, I think people would genuinely be like, "What the fuck is this shit? This shit looks ass. What is this?"
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
if people didn't know what Chrono Cross was and they showed what they showed at the direct, people like, looks like just a regular JRPG. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I
Yeah.
want this. So it's like the games they only legit know how to market are Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. Even Final
Hmm.
Fantasy 16, that marketing was kind of iffy. To me, right now, it's kind of iffy. The gameplay they showed was good, but I'm like, I don't know if it's going to change or not. Um, and then Final Fantasy, I think Final Fantasy 15 is a great example of their marketing. They did everything under the sun, and they showed the gameplay kind of like last minute, or they did
Hmm.
show the gameplay, but then they changed it. Like it wasn't the gameplay that we got. Like, I don't know. I don't know how hard it is to explain because I remember when the first trailers for Final Fantasy came out.
Hmm.
Uh, I remember you were able to control like the other party members and everything. You were able to shoot with what's his face,
Hmm.
the blonde hair kid with the gun. You were able to shoot the monster and stuff, and certain parts would fall off and everything like that. It was almost like Monster Hunter esque, and then they kind of took all that away at the last minute. I don't know. It was just weird. But yeah, sometimes their games are. Oh, you know, it's a really good example. I'm sorry, I don't mean to dwell on this, but their marketing is really 90s like. And I
Mm,
didn't say 90s like because do you remember when they showed Final Fantasy gameplay or Final Fantasy commercials? They never showed the gameplay. Even
true,
Parasite Eve,
true.
Parasite Eve is one of the I'm glad I like RPGs, not glad I love Parasite Eve because if I had bought Parasite Eve based off those trailers, I would have been fucking pissed. Like I was like, "Oh, this is an action game. This is an action shooter game." No. This is a RPG game through and through. And uh I remember like they just showed like the queen in the sky and the airplane flying, explosion and everything like that. Even with like Final
Hmm.
Fantasy, they showed Sephiroth and Cloud fighting. They showed just random stuff. They never showed. They barely showed the gameplay.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's just weird how they market their stuff. I think they're still stuck at that marketing phase, and they never had to get out of it,
yeah.
unfortunately. So.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. Um. Oh well. We'll see what Eidos does next. No matter what, I'll be keenly looking forward. I think we're gonna get another Guardians game, though. I do think we will. So, all right, Montreal. Let's move on. To we got a story about Dragon Age. So it's another negative one. Dragon Age 4's uh, executive producer has left BioWare. Um, and who's Christian Daly is his name, and he's left. Mark Dara left a couple years ago, and he is now being replaced by Corin Bush, who is actually an EA vet who's been at the company for 15 years, and she shared that on Twitter. So this game's lost two executive producers, big names in BioWare, in about 2 years. This game was announced, what, I don't know, 3 years ago now, or two, was it two and a half? It was
Hmm.
like 2019, wasn't it? At the Game
Yeah.
Awards.
Yep.
And we've seen nothing of the game, no trailers beyond little title crawl teases and bullshit like that. No gameplay. We have no idea what this game looks like. We still don't really have any idea what the game is going to be. We have no inkling of a release date at all either. And I'm at this point starting to wonder: is this game in development hell? What do you think?
I think Dragon Age is definitely one of those games where you really need a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of creativity, but you have to know what you're going to do with it. Um, like Mass Effect, we already know, right? Like that's going to be a third person RPG element shooter, right? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
with Dragon Age, the gameplay has changed significantly each
With each
game.
game, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So I feel like that's what the part they're stuck at. Do they go with the regular CRPG strategic route because those are in now? Like people like those slow paced games. Um, or do we go with the action oriented combat of two, or do we do a combination of both like we did in Inquisition? And um, but you remember when Inquisition came out, it was like buggy as hell. So another
Hmm.
thing they might be struggling with is I know we got confirmation for Mass Effect for whatever the fuck is going to be called. That's going to be ran in Unreal 5. What if they're still using Dragon Age Inquisition in Frostbite? Like we didn't get any kind of confirmation on that, or I haven't even looked it up. Um, but I feel like though that's one of those things that would have just randomly popped up in my news feed or something like that. If Dragon Age Inquisition is using Unreal Engine 5. So that could be another thing. It could be an issue of them pulling assets over from Frostbite back over to Unreal Engine 5. I mean, it could be a number of things. And I think Dragon Age is almost one of those franchises that's I might say it's kind of bigger than Mass Effect. I think people
It
like
is.
Dragon Age. Yeah, so
Yeah, which was surprising to me, but yeah, no, it definitely feels like that's true.
yeah, I think it's bigger than Mass Effect. So I think there's a lot of pressure on that game compared to like Mass Effect, to where I don't know. I thought Mass Effect had the bigger appeal, but I guess not. And I can understand why Dragon Age has the appeal it has. I mean,
Hmm.
um, I just think it's a lot more pressure under it,
Yeah,
and I think
I
that
do too.
gameplay. that gameplay thing is a real big thing of why it's why it's being held down or why it's in probably development hell.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
because I feel like Dragon Age has never found its soul, like what it actually is. Because like you said, every game is like drastically different from the game before, or the games before. Really, Dragon Age 3 is totally different from 2 and 1. Even though it has action combat like 2 did, it's like an open world game, more open world game than 2 was. 2 was like a linear, not, I don't know how linear it was, but it was more contained. It was a smaller game, for sure. So it's like it kind of makes me wonder, like what, like when they ask themselves the question, like what is Dragon Age? How do they answer that question? Because I don't really know what the answer is. Like yeah, it's an RPG for sure, and it's a fantasy series, but like what's the game though? What do you envision as the game when you say Dragon Age? And for me, it's an isometric CRPG. You
yeah,
know?
and see, for me, it's
Yeah.
the Inquisition
Right.
side of thing, like the Inquisition gameplay, which I really enjoy, and I really think they should go with that. So I do have, it's not a confirmation, but the latest article was like 2020, and they said that EA still hasn't learned their lesson from Anthem, and it is using the Frostbite engine. So as of right now, it is
Mm,
still using Frostbite until we get some more kind of confirmation that it's not using Frostbite.
hmm.
Um, so I mean, I think that's another thing. That could be the reason why people are leaving left and right because they don't want to use this Frostbite engine. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't, I don't know if it's still the mandate for EA to be like, hey, we're using Frostbite. Um, I could even see Battlefield leaving Frostbite, even though, even though that engine was made for
Yeah.
Battlefield.
I know.
I can see that the next one, since it's under Vincent Pella, I can see him being like, "All right, we're just gonna ditch Frostbite, bro. Like, we're not using this shit anymore. We're going to either
Yeah.
the Source or we're going to Unreal."
Yeah. Well, with BioWare, it may be a thing where they're comfortable with Frostbite at this point, which is fucking weird to say, but they've been fucking with it for over like 10, what, probably 12 years at this point. They've been trying to use this fucking engine. So
Yeah.
and they put so many tools into it themselves that it almost feels like a loss of an investment to like move away from it. But
I mean,
um
sometimes I think you just gotta learn to cut your losses.
I
Like,
know. I know it feels like a bad choice regardless, because every game they've made under Frostbite has been tortured,
hmm
um, to some degree. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I want Dragon Age to be good. I want it to succeed, but dude, it's just like these signs coming out of BioWare just feel like red flags, with this game. And the fact that like when it first was initializing development, they were going to make it a live service game, and then they decided not to, and then they're losing all these directors. Like they've lost 2 executive producers in a year and a half. Like it's just not a good look, really, and it kind of makes you concerned about the game. So
yeah. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head though. Dragon Age really doesn't have its own identity.
yeah.
You're right about that. Because when I think of Dragon Age, I think of Inquisition. But people who played Origins or just Dragon Age One, if like they think of the isometric CRPG
Hmm.
style that uses D&D, that uses D&D rules. So it's like, what is Dragon Age? No one knows. And yeah, for this to be, I would say next to like Star Wars or Knights of the Old Republic, the Old Republic shit. This is one of their biggest franchises, and it doesn't have an identity, and that's kind of bad. And it's in development hell, and that's bad as well. So
Right. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, man.
I agree. I think we'll definitely we'll see. We'll definitely see when this game comes out how it does. I mean, who knows when it's coming though. I think 2024 is like the earliest I could see it coming out, and I'm starting to feel like I'd be surprised by that date. So, or that year. All right, let's move on, Montreal. We got a big story about Activision. Yes, they were purchased by Microsoft, but this is actually has very little to do with that. Bloomberg, Jason Schreier released another article about Activision, this time detailing that the Call of Duty game, the mainline game for 2023, is going to be delayed into 2024, and it will be the first time in nearly 20 years where there will not be a Call of Duty release in a year, in a calendar year. And this is so this year's game is on track. Looks like it's probably going to be coming out this year, but next year's game, 2023's game, is not going to come out, and there will be no Call of Duty game next November. So that is I don't know, like you think like, oh, whatever, it's a video game delay, but to me this is like a colossal news story that I feel like actually got lost in like the Elden Ring hype cycle. Cuz to me this is fucking crazy. This is crazy. They literally have built an entire infrastructure around making Call of Duty games come out every year, for 15 to 20 years now, and the idea that they were going to miss a year is nuts. But it feels like it's been foreshadowed the last 5 or 6 years, because Call of Duty's been in trouble. Some of these releases the last few years have really barely made it to the finish line. There was the one, I think it was Treyarch was making. Was it Treyarch? Or no, it was Sledgehammer, I think, was making the one they made a couple years ago. I think it might have been the World War II game. Was like in fucking total development hell. They didn't think they were gonna make it, and then Raven came in and like saved the game basically, and they got it out on time. And that happened with, I think, another one a few years back as well. So it just seems like something has broken inside Activision's Call of Duty pipeline, and they need a little bit of pressure release, which is why we're getting a delay. So, Montreal, how does this news strike you? Are you excited, or do you not care?
I I actually don't care. And it's not just because like the podcast or anything else. This is actually in my group chat, couple of my group chats, and I just didn't care. I was just like, all right, it's still gonna be the same shit in 2 years.
Yeah,
Like this is so bad for me. Like that's and like oh like people like I think it's like it's the Pokemon thing, right?
yeah,
It's the
yeah, yeah,
Pokemon effect. I call it now because it's like I've been asking them to do this for at least 30 years or 10 years. Take just
yeah.
one break off, bro. Just take a
30
year
years.
off. Uh, yeah, just take a fucking year. It feels like 30 years. Goddamn.
I know, right?
Uh, just take a year off, bro, and make something a unique and original. And now that they're actually doing it, I just don't fucking care anymore. Like it's like the Pokemon shit. I
Well,
told them to do this, and no, now they're doing it, and it's like I don't fucking care anymore. So,
yeah. No, and I understand that sentiment, because it's like, are they going to do anything new with it? I don't think so. Is this game going to be much better than any other Call of Duty that's come out in the last 20 years? I doubt it.
hmm
I doubt it. And that's a Bob's Discount Furniture shout out. But the thing for me about this, the reason I find this story fascinating, is I don't really care about Call of Duty. Fuck whatever, fuck Call of Duty. I think it's the vacuum that's going to be left though in that window next in November 2023. I think a lot of companies right now are probably, this whole week, have probably been like scrambling in meetings, like being like, okay, can we hit that release window next year? Like, because that is a massive opportunity for everybody, shooters, not shooters, whatever the fuck, any game. Like, suddenly there's this huge power vacuum that like somebody's going to need to fill. And I'm going to be interested to see how frantic next November is going to be, like November 2023. Like, how many releases are going to get fucking piled into that window, that usually avoid it,
Yeah,
um
that's actually a really good point. I didn't think about it from that aspect. I was thinking about it from a pure Call of Duty aspect, but that is
mhm.
true. It is gonna feel weird not getting a new Call of Duty, but at the same time, it's not gonna feel too weird because we still have Warzone, and I think Warzone probably gonna release some kind of pack or something around that time, you know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, there won't, because yeah, dude, there won't be a Battlefield game either. So I don't like,
ooh, you're
who's
oh
gonna
shit, you're right.
fill that, man? Who's gonna fill that gap? Like, I think Nintendo is probably gonna. I'm sure Nintendo will have something. They usually,
I'm pretty sure Sony is scrambling some for someone to like,
dude. Yeah, right. Imagine they drop like Spider-Man next year, like Spider-Man 2 next year in that
hmm
window or something
Yep.
like that. I'm because we've been hearing rumors that there's a showcase coming from Sony, similar to the one we had a few months ago, detailing 2022 and beyond, like the back end of 2022 and beyond for them, in terms of first party games. And one of the big ones that we've heard almost nothing about, but I know is still in development, like we know is still in development, is Naughty Dog is Factions, dude. The
Oh
multiplayer,
yeah, I forgot all about that shit.
game, and suddenly feels like, dude, that's a big window for a multiplayer game like that to just come in and
And
blow shit up. you know,
yeah, and if they did plan on dropping it this year, they will have enough of development time to push it back to next year and still be
hmm
safe, you know?
Yeah.
So,
It almost feels strategic, right? Like,
yeah.
fuck it. Even if you were going to be ready this year for Factions, maybe push it back, dude. Like, cuz yeah, that I don't know. It's interesting. I think we don't know much about next year's releases. There's very few games we know about beyond things that have been delayed into next year, and most of those delays are centered on the first half of the year anyways.
Mhm.
So it's really honestly, it's games we don't know about that are going to be scrambling to try to release in that time frame, but I am going to be following this very closely to see kind of what we're looking at. Um,
That's so weird that when two games, it's like taking like US and Russia off the map and then you just have like everyone scrambling for power now, like it's
Dude,
going to be
literally,
very
that is it, man. That is, yeah, it's a great analogy. It's like, dude, you're taking one of the most powerful games in gaming out. It's out. Like it's like the first seed like getting knocked off in the NFL playoffs or something, or like
Mhm.
NBA playoffs. Like they out. Somebody else is gonna win.
Well, you like
Um,
like Brady leaving. He left.
yeah,
He's retired now. So
right.
now there's like a power vacuum for who's going to be the next big quarterback.
Yep. Right.
So
Right.
Battlefield and Call of Duty's not dropping next year or yeah, next year. So it's like we don't know what's going to happen. It is, you know what? That is very exciting. So I guess that I can see why that's big news now because I was just thinking of it as in a smaller scale of like just Call of Duty,
hmm
what they were going to do with that extra time. But it's not so much more about them. It's so much more about what the industry is going to do without
Yep.
these two major pillars
Exactly.
of uh
Yep.
of revenue.
Well, yeah, because you take that out too, and then Assassin's Creed's another one. Like, does Ubisoft have an Assassin's Creed game for next year? Because that would be the big filler to fill that power vacuum.
Hmm.
And it feels right. We haven't heard anything, but besides the fact that they have another game coming out before Infinite or whatever, but that might be the series maybe that kind of I'm sure Ubisoft is now like salivating probably like oh my god, we've been doing awful, this is our chance, so yeah, no, it'll be interesting to watch. I'm definitely going to be every reveal trailer we get now going forward for the next year and a half. I'm going to be really curious if it lands in that window.
Hmm.
So we'll definitely see on that front, and we will let you guys know when we hear more. All right, Montreal, let's move on. We've got this is our final news story for the week. MPD numbers for January 2022. So let's go through them. Total video game sales were 4.684 billion versus 4.8 billion last year. That is a minus 2% change. Video game content. This is all DLCs, microtransactions, physical, digital sales, subscriptions, all that good stuff. 4.109 billion versus 4.263 billion. That is a minus 4% decrease. Video game hardware sales 390 million last year versus 319 million. 390 million this year versus 319 million last year. That is a 22% increase. And then video game accessories 185 million this year versus 218 million last year. That is a minus 15% decrease. So for the most part, overall, it was a down month compared to last year. The only thing, hardware continues to be high seller overall, which is not surprising. We are kind of in the beginning, early to mid part of a generation now. So, but the industry as a whole is kind of looks like it seems like seemingly plateauing a little bit right now. So we'll see. If anything can break through and push us to new heights, maybe it's NFTs, Montrell.
Oh God, no! Just
The
kill me
industry
now.
seems to think so. Okay, so top 20 best selling games for the month of January 2022. Number one, Pokemon Legends Arceus. And that number, by the way, that number one ranking is without digital sales being taken into account at all. So that's fucking bonkers when I read the rest of this list. Number two is Call of Duty Vanguard. Number three, Monster Hunter Rise. Number four, Madden NFL 22. Number five, God of War 2018. Number six, Marvel Spider Man Miles Morales. Number seven, FIFA 22. Number eight, Mario Kart 8. Number nine, Rainbow Six Extraction. Number 10, Battlefield 2042. Number 11, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. Number 12, Far Cry 6. Number 13, Minecraft. Number 14, NBA 2K22. Number 15, Mario Party Superstars. Number 16, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Number 17, Forza Horizon 5. Number 18, Halo Infinite. Number 19, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Number 20, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Some other notes here. This is from Venture Beat. Pokemon Legends Arceus was number one, was the best selling game, but uh, Pokemon Diamond, Brilliant Diamond, and Shining Pearl were also in the charts. So Pokemon doing very well. Uh, PC ports of Monster Hunter Rise and God of War probably more than likely, very extremely likely, push them up to the top 10 for
Hmm.
sure. And then Mario Kart 8 has surpassed 43 million copies shipped worldwide. And then Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, interesting that this game has had a very long tail to it since it came out when the consoles launched in November 2020. And it is now the third best selling game in lifetime dollar sales for a Sony published title since 1995, only behind the original Spider-Man in 2019 or 2018 and God of War 2018. So, very, very successful game for Sony. Montreal, in that list, anything jumping out to you there?
I do want to say I think the Marvel uh Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales is a really great game. I want to contribute that though to they are bundling that game with PS5s, and that's kind of like the only way you can get a PS5 right now is through a bundle package. So that
Mm-hmm.
that could be the reason why it's doing so well because it is getting bundled. So whenever someone gets their hands on it, they're just getting the whole bundle
Mm-hmm.
thing. But it
That is
is
a
a,
fair
a
point.
good game within its own right. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to take away from it, but I am saying that's probably one of the contributing factors.
No, it's a very
Uh,
fair point.
yeah. Because even when I got my PS5, uh, that was one of the first bundles. It was Miles Morales. That was my first PS5 game.
Mm-hmm.
So, but nothing else is really sticking out to me. I'm glad like God of War is doing really well. I did make a joke about PC fans, like how they get an old game and now it's this is my game of the year, and it came out 5 years ago on console. So I think that's funny. But
Hey man, you know what? I've called games that came out, fucking years ago my game of the year anyways. Like Hades was probably my game of the year last year and it came out like what, like 2 or 3 years ago
yeah.
on Switch. So, hey, man, be nice to the
I'll
PC
be nice to
players.
the PC players. They're just funny though. But
Yeah.
besides that, nothing really stands out to me. I don't understand for the life of me why um, Mario Kart is selling so well. I mean, I guess it makes sense, right? Because you got like over 100 million Switches out there, correct? Am I
Yep.
wrong?
Nope,
So,
you're correct.
so I guess it would only make sense that the first purchase you buy would be like a Mario Kart game.
Or Zelda, yeah. One
Yeah,
of
or a
those,
Zelda
yeah.
game. Like
Or
it
Mario
feels,
Party, yeah.
yeah, it just feels natural. Like I feel like I would do that too. Like if I bought, I don't have Mario Kart because I had it on the Wii U. And I
I
never bought
did.
it. I never bought it for the Switch.
Actually, did I ever buy it for Switch? I bought it for Wii U and
Yeah,
I didn't play it and I sold it. Um but yeah. Um yeah, I don't know. I can't believe Mario Kart's like brand power. It's pretty nuts, dude, that it charts so consistently on here, every single month. Um
well,
but
the other thing, the thing is about Mario Kart. I don't remember it being like the go-to game for Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like I remember Mario Kart 64, everyone
It
had that
wasn't,
one.
man. Mario Kart's always been big, but I don't know, dude. Like it I feel like Mario Kart really exploded when the Wii one came out. Um you remember that one with the wheel thing? The
Mm,
like wheel attachment you put your Wiimote in and all that?
yeah,
I feel like that's when Mario Kart really kind of like took off, and then Mario Kart 8 was also really big, even though it was on the Wii U. It was still a really big seller from Nintendo, and then they
yeah,
moved it to the Switch, and it's become like one of the most popular games literally on the planet. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy because I mean, more power to you, everybody, but I don't really like Mario Kart that much. Like, um, I think Mario Kart 64 is really the only one I've ever gravitated towards in a big way. Um, what I played of Mario Kart 8 was, it's fun, but it's just, I don't know, it's just missing something for me overall.
yeah. I feel the same way. Mario Kart 64 has always been my favorite Mario Kart. I don't know what it is about that game. I'm pretty sure 60% of it is nostalgia. Um, but I don't know, that game's just so fucking fun, man. Compared to like Mario Kart 8, which I
Hmm.
know a lot of people, the numbers speak for itself. It's a really good game, but yeah, like you
Yeah.
said, it's just missing something. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it has that love in it, like like the other games do. Like even like Double Dash, I hate Double Dash, but I don't know. It's just weird. Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like Mario Kart 8 for me, I think the reason I don't like it that much is it kind of feels generic. Like there's nothing like special about it, which maybe that's a good thing for most people, but like cuz yeah, like you're saying Double Dash, I don't like Double Dash, but at least it had like a personality, right, with like the two, characters on the same cart and all that.
yeah,
And they had their special powers and everything in that game. And then the Wii one had like the wheel thing. You use the motion controls to drive and all that, which was actually was pretty fun. Whereas Mario Kart 8, like I don't think has anything like that. It's pretty basic as a game. Like there's not really any like super interesting design pieces to the game for me. So um, yeah, but Pokemon Legends, man, can't believe that how big that game was for Nintendo. So we'll see what comes of that for sure. All right, Montreal. That's all we got for news, man. So like I said at the beginning of the episode, we have a bunch of topics to talk about centered around Elden Ring and this game. So how do you want to start this? Do you want to go into you want to just start with the world design piece, or you want to talk about the reviews? What do you where do you want to go?
well, I went kind of dark on the game. So what's like the world design like, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, so the reason I put this on here, I guess. So yeah, we'll start with the world design. So the game, a lot of the game, this kind of goes into the comparison thing we later on too. Is like the game's been being compared to Breath of the Wild a lot, and we went back and forth on this like through text throughout the week about this thing. Is like why are people still so fucking obsessed with Breath of the Wild and like love this shit and are falling in love with Elden Ring for similar reasons. And I think we kind of, I kind of like, I kind of came down on the idea that I think it's the fact that Breath of the Wild and what appears to be Elden Ring as well. These games are not marker driven games, open world games, where the game tells you where everything is and puts like question marks on your map. Oh, there's something over here. You should go look for it. There's none of that shit. And the games don't really have quest logs per se, which apparently Elden Ring doesn't really either. So you're not like following map markers around for the most part in either game. Zelda has it a little bit. Um, I think it does actually have some kind of quest log of some sort, from what I remember in that game.
Yeah, it has a
Uh,
main quest log.
yeah, it does, and it does have a side quest log too. And you can put there are markers for some of that stuff on your map, but it's not super prevalent or necessary really.
Hmm.
In that game, it doesn't inundate your map with tons of icons and shit.
Yeah,
You know, versus a game like Horizon or Witcher 3 or any Ubisoft open world game where it's just your map is just like a like throw up of markers, like literally is just markers fucking everywhere, in those games. I think that's where people are really globbing onto these games, and they some for some reason believe that that is like super hyper innovative in games when it's not at all. It's like a lot of the people talking about this shit and like losing their mind about it, it's like they're old enough to have played games in the early 2000s or the 90s when we didn't have map markers for anything. We didn't have quest logs for anything in RPGs. Like there was like, dude, you play a fucking Final Fantasy game, there's no quest log, there's no map markers. You walk around, you just need to figure out where the fuck to go. Like you just figure it out, bro. Like so that shit's been around. It's just at some point, Grand Theft Auto 3 I think is the game actually where map markers became like a thing finally, and then World of Warcraft took that and like ran with it in the MMO space. And this is why this whole conversation is like trite to me, is because we MMO players have been through this song and dance already, with this, where
Hmm.
like World of Warcraft ruined map markers. It's the thing that popularized map markers in the MMO space. Every game started copying them, where it's like you have question marks on your fucking map when there's a quest over there, and then the game tells you where to go to complete your quests. And then that got really popular in MMOs, and then it kind of ruined MMOs because we're all like, well, when the game just tells you where to go, it's kind of not that fun to play,
Hmm.
rather than figuring it out on your own. And then MMOs have kind of like um almost transitioned are starting there's some starting to transition back toward a design tenant where you don't have map markers anymore, for quests and whatnot, because people want to explore the world and really like live in the world, like it's immersive or whatever. So this has come over to single player though, in terms of Breath of the Wild and stuff, and it feels like it's almost an accident that Nintendo made a game that is revered like this, because it just feels like Nintendo being behind the times rather than like being truly innovative. Like it just feels like a happy accident that they're like that they didn't put map markers in Breath of the Wild more, um
Yeah, that's funny that you said
yeah.
that. Like, yeah, because I mean, I sent a tweet over to you where somebody said that there's like this game was like, if this game was made in 2008, I would have been like, oh wow, this is really cool. Um, but also probably was like, they could have added some map markers for me to know where to go.
Yeah.
So it's just funny with the time placement because I asked people, I was genuinely wondering what made Breath of the Wild so great. And people were like, oh, well, it defined the open world genre, and it's like, what I think Elden Ring and uh Breath of the Wild are doing is it just taking what other open world games did, and it was sort of like a natural progression, and it was the first game to do it. I feel like if this was like a Ubisoft game or something like that that had to did it before them,
Hmm.
um, it could have been a toss up. Like, oh, I can do, I can do anything in any other way, or it could have been praised, or it could have been like, they could have killed the game. But because it's now granted, Breath of the Wild has like a ton of different mechanics built into it, from what I'm learning and stuff like that.
Hmm.
People keep quote unquote discovering tech for Breath of the Wild and everything of that nature. So like the mechanics of the game is it's cool, and I like that. It's just for me like the game, open world games tend to be boring. The thing I'm looking at for Elden Ring though is it looks like it fills the world with a lot of different shit, unlike
Hmm.
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's like rewards, right? Like, dude, the thing about Breath of the Wild that I don't enjoy, or I didn't enjoy, is the game. The exploration in the game is fun, genuinely. Like, I actually do enjoy exploring that world in that game. But the problem with the game is like you're not really rewarded for exploring at all. Like the things you get are useless for the most part. You get like a fucking like one of the stupid Korok seeds or whatever for doing something, and it's like, dude, like at a certain point they're just useless. Like like, oh yeah, I get to make my inventory bigger. What a reward, you know? It's like whoopee, you know? It's like that's shit that MMOs sell you in their cash shop, you know? Like
Yeah,
I don't fuck me, dude. Like it's not an exciting reward. And then the gear and equipment you get a lot of the time is not exciting either, because oftentimes you already have a better weapon from an enemy you killed, you know, or something like that. And
yeah.
like rupees aren't really super exciting in that game either. It's just like I just think the game does a bad job of rewarding the player. And I think the other problem I have with it is a lot of the game's other mechanics are subpar. Like the combat sucks. Like the combat is bad in Breath of the Wild. It's not good video game combat for a third person action game. Like it's just not straight up.
Well,
Sorry. Like,
I I
you
think
know.
that's the thing about where I really get irritated with the Elden Ring reviews I have been reading, where they say it's like Breath of the Wild. For a player like me, that's not a compliment.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me it's like Breath of the Wild. In what aspects is it like Breath of the Wild? Oh, the open world design and everything of that nature. Well, this game, if it has and that was my main, gripe with Breath of the Wild was the combat and stuff like that, and how boring I thought the world was overall, in my opinion. But they're saying that the game is explorable and there are a ton of different rewards and nooks and crannies and stuff like that from the reviews I've read, and it's like, okay, well, this game is better than Breath of the Wild. Like, this is a genuinely better game. It pushed the genre
Hmm.
forward,
Hmm.
and I don't think it's going to get that kind of recognition. I think people are still going to say, "Oh man, this game's like Breath of the Wild." They're not going to say when another open world game comes out, "Oh man, it's like Elden Ring." They're not going to say that. They're going to say
No,
they're
they're
going to
not.
jump back to Breath of the Wild, and I think that's really, really um those comparisons really take away from the effort that From Software has put into Elden Ring or whatever, or any other game for that instance, for that matter, that try to do something different or whatever the case may be. Um, because saying the game, like I said, saying games like Breath of the Wild is not a compliment. I think of that one game that changed its name. I can't think of the name it changed it to. Like, what was it called? Phoenix or something like that?
Oh,
Or
Immortals Phoenix Rising? Yeah.
yeah, more Phoenix Rising. Like, I saw somebody playing that, and the gameplay, the combat is like fucking phenomenal. But people always say, "Oh man, it's just like Breath of the Wild. It looks just like Breath of the Wild. It's just like Breath of the Wild." And from what I understand, you can customize your character in that game. The story is actually pretty decent. The combat is actually pretty decent. But because people kept saying it's like Breath of the Wild, it turned me off of the game. Like,
Yeah,
I don't want to play another.
there's like character progression and stuff too. Like I think you level
Yeah,
your character and stuff. Like, dude,
yeah.
that's
There's
like
skills and
nothing like
everything.
Breath of the Wild. Just like, dude, this goes into one of the other topics we have where people have been comparing Lost Ark to Monster Hunter, like the Guardian raids and stuff. And it's like people have like, I don't know, man. Maybe this is why podcasters are like popular, or influencers in general are popular in the game. It just feels like people are like either too lazy or just not capable of like having more deeper insight into a game. Like saying a game is like Breath of the Wild because it has an open world and maybe doesn't have map markers is like really shallow analysis, you know. You're not analyzing the game in any deep way, and the fact that the whole industry this week is like pointing at Elden Ring and being like, "Oh, it reminds me of Breath of the Wild. What I felt like when I played Breath of," is like, does it? Does it though? Like, dude, when you're getting your face smashed in by a fucking boss, that reminds you of Breath of the Wild? When you're picking up equipment and going to a bonfire and like leveling your character, that reminds you of Breath of the Wild? Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like that, like the comparison ends at like it's an open world game that's third person and you have swords and shields. Like, okay, like it's like it's not like the comparison like doesn't make sense at a certain point anymore. And it's like that, like that's exactly to your point. Like Lost Ark is hilarious that people are comparing the Guardian raids to Monster Hunter. Like, what are you talking about? Lost Ark is an isometric ARPG. It's like, oh, you fight big monsters by yourself. That's like Monster Hunter. It's like, okay, I guess. Like it's like that's where the comparison ends. Literally, in Lost Ark's case, it's nothing
Well,
like Monster Hunter.
you
Like
know what?
nothing.
I can't blame it all on the player, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it as we talk about it, and I think it's like a subconscious thing, and it just
Hmm.
manifests itself into words. And the reason I say it's a subconscious thing is because you ever shopped on Steam, and let's say you're playing a
Mm,
game like
mhm.
Deus Ex, right? And then you're like, all right, I'm gonna look for the game. Well, since you played Deus Ex, look at these other games, and
Yeah,
it's like, wait, that that game's nothing like Deus Ex. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
that game's
right.
nothing like Deus Ex.
There's no game like Deus Ex. Like,
Yeah,
really, though.
exactly. Like,
You know?
I play Mass Effect or whatever, right? And it was like Technomancer. It was like, oh man, Technomancer is just like Mass Effect. And I played it, and it's like a really, really shitty version of Mass Effect, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is not what I wanted. So uh, the algorithms like really
Mhm.
kind of tailored our brain to that because I
You
don't
need a
remember
frame of reference, right? Yeah.
yeah, like I don't remember other games. Excuse me. Like when I read reviews and like old game informers and stuff like that, like I don't remember games like reviewers doing this. They may have said it once or twice when there was like a platformer, like, oh, call it, Mario does this, whereas Crash Bandicoot does this, or whatever like that. They may have done little comparisons like that, but for the most part, people usually let the game be itself. Um, Albeit that they may compare it to other games, but it'll be like, well, if I'm playing Halo or something like that, or I don't want to use Halo because that's kind of a unique case. It's like an arena shooter. Like if I'm playing Call of Duty or something like that, and then I'm playing like Medal of Honor, and then they're like, well,
Yeah.
Medal of Honor does this, whereas Call of Duty does this or whatever. Or sometimes they may not even mention the game at all. Um, but then you get games like I feel like that those comparison tools make you miss out on games like Monster Hunter. Uh, and I say that because I there wasn't a game like Monster Hunter. When I discovered Monster Hunter, it was on the back
Yeah.
of a fucking
Right.
Game Informer magazine, and I was like, oh, this game looks cool. I want to fucking play it. And I have no idea. I went out, I looked for it, bought it on the PS2, and I bought it and I played it. And there was nothing else like that game. And I
Yeah.
think that's the reason that game went under the radar for so long because there genuinely was no other game like Monster Hunter. You want
Mhm.
to know how I started playing Dark Souls? I started playing Dark Souls because I searched online for games like Monster Hunter and Dark Souls popped up. Now, you tell me Dark Souls is nothing like Monster Hunter. Nothing. But
Yeah.
because I searched online games like Monster Hunter, Dark Souls
Yeah.
is one of the first games that popped.
That's
I remember
crazy.
that shit.
Yeah, that's a
That's how
stretch.
actually I got into Dark Souls. Because I was trying to remember for the life of me how I got into this franchise, and it was because I did a Google search or I did some kind of search or something, and it was like games like Monster Hunter, and then yeah, Dark Souls popped up.
Yeah,
So
that's wild because yeah, they're not. God, there's like almost nothing really similar about them at all that I can think
I
of.
think if you
You know,
still do that, well, there are a lot of clones now from Monster Hunter, but I think if you still do it, you may still get Dark Souls.
let's go look. I'm gonna test it right now. Games like Monster Hunter. Well, it just showed me like 10 Monster Hunter games in a row. So
Yeah.
but I yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I just like I don't know. I get annoyed with the industry when games like this come out because like Elden Ring, fine, like it might be
Okay,
great.
bro. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Games like Monster Hunter. Okay. It says 15 action RPGs that you might like if you played Monster Hunter World. Number
Mm.
fucking 12. Devil May Cry 5. Are you fucking kidding me right now?
Oh my god, I see it. I got the article. Dude, what are you talking
the
about?
the
Oh,
Surge, the Surge
the
2, God
Surge
of
2,
War,
God of War.
Code Vein, bro.
What are they talking about?
Demon
What,
Souls is number 4. Demon Souls number
bro?
4.
Oh my god, man! They have some of the games they have on here are legitimate like Monster Hunter clones, like
Yeah, and
Dauntless,
like
God
Dauntless,
Eater,
God Eater,
Tukiden, I think.
Freedom
Yeah,
Wars.
Tukiden. Yeah,
It's
Freedom
yeah,
Wars.
yeah.
Yeah,
So those are like legit Monster Hunter clones. Um, but like Ribbit of the Ashes, that's like a Dark Souls esque game. I remember that game. It's like a Dark Souls shooter game. So I can kind of see the comparison for Horizon Zero Dawn. So that's why I skipped over that one because even the
hmm,
developer said they kind of wanted that Monster Hunter feel when you're playing the game
yeah,
because they love Monster Hunter. So that's why they designed Horizon the way they did. But
No,
yeah,
and,
like,
and to their credit, that was one of my comparison points when I played the game originally.
mhm,
Is the giant dinosaur robot dinosaur fights do feel like Monster Hunter fights?
yeah,
Um,
and they actually said like in one of their developer diaries, uh they love Monster Hunter, and that's why they designed, the game the way they did, because they almost wanted to be Monster Hunter esque.
mhm,
Because I remember like asking DJ that, and he told me like when I first saw Horizon or whatever, he told me like a whole bunch of shit about the game or whatever.
mhm,
But yeah, like what the fuck, man? Like like Code Vein, God of War.
yeah.
I'm trying to see the God of War
Yeah, but dude,
comparison.
even Horizon, right? Like saying it's like Monster Hunter is such a like you are excluding so much about that game by saying that, dude. Like it's an open world action RPG, like story focused RPG. Like Monster Hunter is nothing like that. Beyond the combat, like Monster Hunter is nothing. None of those things that I just said are in Monster Hunter. So by saying Horizon Zero Dawn is like Monster Hunter, you are like totally doing the game a disservice when you say that, you know?
Hmm.
And it's the same case here with Elden Ring, comparing it to Breath of the Wild. Elden Ring is a way deeper game than Breath of the Wild. No offense to Breath of the Wild, but Breath of the Wild is just it's a completely like basic game in comparison. Like this is a deep ass action RPG. Like it's like a super deep RPG systems and shit and like gear and shit. Like Breath of the Wild has none of that stuff, for the most part.
Yeah,
It's like, and if it has it, it's really stripped down and basic, in comparison.
yeah,
So,
exactly. So like that's why I don't like the comparison at all, because yeah, that's funny that that article did mention Demon Souls, because like I did a Google search, and that Google search was like Dark Souls. I'm like, oh, okay, let me try Dark Souls, and it was nothing like it, but I still love the game anyway.
hmm
And this is at the time too where you couldn't really rent games anymore. Either you
yeah,
GameFlyed it or you just went out and bought it. And I just went out and bought Dark Souls, and I played it because I bought it, and I loved it, but I played it because I was like, "What the fuck is this game? This game's stupid." And I
yeah,
put it
right.
down. And I bought it. But anyway, get back on topic. Yeah, I think that comparison thing is really like rotting our brains as far as like
hmm
actually getting players to play and explore new games. I think that's why a lot of new games have a hard time breaking into the market, because either you have word of mouth or you have nothing at this point. Like game developer or game reviewers can't go off of anything when they're trying to describe a game, or write an article about a game. If a
hmm
game is like, I can't say Stardew Valley because that's like Harvest Moon. Let's say a game like Underworld or Undertale, right? I guess you can compare that to Mother, right?
Mm, yeah, but even so, like Undertale is like, I mean, I haven't played it, but my understanding of it is like the game has like so many deep mechanics to it where like there's like pacifist runs, there's runs where you murder everything in front of you that change the endings. Like there's like multiple endings in the game, like tons of different endings, and stuff. So, I don't like, I mean, like that's like like that's my point. It's like a shallow comparison, okay?
Yeah. So
Even if it is true to some degree, you are leaving out so much by leaving your analysis there. Like there needs to be more to it. This is why
yeah.
it sucks, because people say that and they don't have time to elaborate. I'm sure
Hmm.
if you talk to a lot of these reviewers, they wouldn't just say it's like Breath of the Wild and leave it at that. They would go into why it's like Breath of the Wild, and then they would continue to expound upon more that isn't like Breath of the Wild that they enjoy. But it's
it's
like,
it's just dangerous to tweet that, and it's
yes,
dangerous to put
no,
that in,
I know,
in an
yeah,
article head, like the
right,
heading of the article. This game's
hmm
like, this game's the 10 because it's just like Breath of the Wild. And it's like now that I'm starting to see other people play it and they're not comparing it to Breath of the Wild, I'm actually like genuinely going to play. At first I was like not going to buy it, but
hmm
like now I am going to buy it because I really want to play it and see what it's like. Like, is Dark Souls just super open world and I can explore and shit like that? Like that's cool or whatever. Or what it's like. But that's why for me, I really don't read too many reviews. I read reviews because I knew we were going to have this conversation today, but I go dark on games now because the comparison shit is just fucking ridiculous at this point. Like it is.
yeah. It's hard to take seriously, like
Yeah.
when the hyperbole starts coming out. Because yeah, Elden Ring's in this realm now where there's like a group of people on Twitter, and I mean, I don't know, I might even be part of it, where like they're like inherently skeptical of Elden Ring right now because everybody is saying that this might be one of the greatest games ever made, and maybe it is. That's possible. I'm gonna play it now too. Like I wasn't planning on it, but I kind of want to play it now because I want to see like, is this game as good as everybody's saying it is? Or is it just like a nine, like, which I
Hmm.
mean, just a nine is amazing. That's a great game. But, it's like, but, like when you're saying greatest game of all time, we're talking like, we're talking, that is a heavy title to put on a game that just came out, like that's a really heavy title to put on a game, like any game. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
So,
Another thing too is like somebody brought up like this guy said he just got his review copy. He was like, people are saying that this game's the greatest game ever. Have they even played the game or finished it? And that's a legitimate point. And I understand like these reviewers get weeks in advance or whatever the case may
mm,
be, but
mm,
um it is weird how everybody's just parroting each other, right? They did the same. Okay, this is why I'm super skeptical of it, and I'm gonna get some flack from some people from this. They did the same shit with Cyberpunk. Remember when
mm,
Cyberpunk? Oh my, this might be the greatest game I witnessed, guys.
true,
They
true, dude.
guys, I went to Cyberpunk's, studio.
Mm,
They had these decked
mhm.
out computers, and I played it for like 2 or 3 hours. We paid like 5 hours of the game. Mind blowing, the greatest game I've ever played in my life. And then it comes out in its ass. You see what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
not, and and by no means do I think Elden Ring is going to be in that stratosphere, but
No. No, but
it
it's natural to be skeptical because we've been burned before, right?
exactly.
And I think that guy, I've seen people tweet that similar sentiment, like, have they even beat the game? And that guy was getting like filleted, one of those
Yep.
people I saw. And I think it's unfair to fillet him like that because it's a fair question. Maybe it is unreasonable to expect a game to be beaten before somebody can review it. However, I think these outlets and even influencers to this degree is like it there's almost some responsibility to beat it, because to me, like, this is my problem with the whole situation, right? They got the game, a lot of them are reporting they got the game like a week ago, as of yesterday when the reviews started coming out, and a week wasn't enough time for them to beat the game. They put in like 60, 80 hours, which is a lot. This game is big. This game seems like it's really huge. But um, they're trying to meet the embargo set by the publisher Namco, and the embargo was yesterday. So they are trying to play the game really fast, really quickly in order to meet that embargo. And none of them that I could see, nobody made the decision to hold off on reviewing the game fully. Actually, I think there was one site. I'm trying to remember what site it was, but there was one site that's doing like a review in progress or something like that. They don't want to put a score on it till they beat it.
I like
Um,
those. I actually
which,
respect
yeah,
sites that do stuff
respect
like that.
that. That's exactly what I'm talking about here. Is like show some restraint. You're so desperate to be like in the zeitgeist of the conversation that you're going to like inhibit your ability to finish the game so that you can put a score on the game and put that out the day the embargo lifts. Like why didn't you just take 2 more days and like finish the game, because you're going to finish it anyways because you love it so much. Like fucking finish the game to have a full picture of what it is, because when you don't do that, suddenly, like, all of a sudden it's like, okay, I mean, yeah, sure, you've played 80 hours, which I mean is a fuck ton of game time. Sure, that gives you a full picture. But dude, I've played games that I loved for 95% of them. And then you get to the end of it, like the original Dying Light is an example of this. I fucking love Dying Light. And then you get to the final sequence of that game, like the final mission, and it's the worst. It's one of the worst fucking things I've ever played.
Well,
It's
we just
totally different from the rest of the game. It has these weird staged boss fights that are fucking like weird QTE shit, and it's like fucking like totally ruins the game. Like, not ruins the game, but like takes the experience down for sure. Like, it's
yeah.
not up to par with the rest of the game,
If it was a 10 up to that point, it would have came down to like a
to like a
9.5.
9.5. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, right.
I mean,
It's a blemish. Like,
we've literally had you know the couple of games that we have reviewed. We went through that sentiment. We're like, oh man, it's the greatest game ever, and then like, and then like, oh.
Tales
I'm
of
just
Arise, right? It's a good example. Like, dude,
Tales
if
of
we had only
Arise.
played, like, dude, if we had only played 3 chapters of Tales of Arise, we'd have been like, "Oh, this is the best Tales game ever!" Oh, like we were in love with the game. And then over the course of a couple weeks, as we got closer to finishing it and then finished it, our opinions were totally different. Like, it changes over time, dude. Like, so I'm not saying in this case, if everybody had beaten Elden Ring, they're all going to score it less. I don't think that's the case here, but
Yeah.
the point stands though that you, like, by not beating the game, you are leaving the window open that you don't have a full picture, that you're, which then calls the whole review process into question at that point, you know.
Well, Mass
um
Effect 3 is one of those games, right?
yeah.
Remember, you go through the entire game, and then those last three choices
Yep.
literally killed a lot of people's review scores for the game because they're
It
like,
kills the experience for a lot of
yeah,
people, legitimately. And I can see why, because, like, it's, yeah, dude, it's just like, it's so tough to, like, require that from a reviewer. I understand, but this whole system of embargoes is what drives this. Like, if we
hmm
didn't have embargoes for people to meet at all, and people didn't care so much about getting, like, having their opinion out there fucking first, then maybe this wouldn't even be a problem, and people would more organically review these games, in a more healthy environment. Because, yeah, it just feels like this race to, like, review a game really fast, because I don't care about that. Like, dude, you can make the choice or whatever you want when you're a reviewer, to finish a game or not before you review it. That's really your choice. I'm never going to make that choice. I'm probably, before I actually, like, do an official review, I would beat the game, like, cuz I want to have the full experience. I don't know. So, that's my approach, at least. That would be
yeah,
my
because
approach.
I feel like that's fair because let's say a game like Final Fantasy 7, I think that was like what 25 hours at max, right? Maybe 30 to
The
40.
remake?
Yeah, the
The remake?
remake.
Yeah, it was like 30. Yeah, 30.
30 max. I beat it in like 25 hours, 20 hours or whatever.
Mhm.
But then you have a game like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which 20 hours is a game, you haven't even unlocked the second part of the game yet.
I
Like
know, right.
the
Yeah, right.
mechanics change.
Or Xenoblade
Xenoblade,
Chronicles X is
I
another
was just
one,
about to
yeah.
say that X,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that game legitimately changes like 50 hours of the game. Like you're in mechs now and you're doing different mechanics. So it's like, how do you and if you just play 40 hours of the game, you're like, man, this game's a 10, like okay, that's cool, and then and then we know the mech part is even better, but like what if the mech part was worse and the reviewer didn't read get to that part because they're like, oh, I played 50 hours of the game, I'm good. Like, oh, I played 40 hours of the game,
Well,
I'm good.
well, the opposite though. Think about the opposite. What if they played 40 hours and, like, oh, this game's an 8, but if they had played the next 10 hours and gotten to the mech part, they're like, oh my god, this game's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
it's like the point stands, and there is something to be said for. I will say, on the other side of this coin, real quick.
hmm
I don't like, if you're a viewer and you play 30 hours of a game and you fucking hate it to the point that you don't want to finish it, and that's like the basis of your review of the game, that's totally fine.
Totally
I
understandable. Yeah.
totally understand that. If you get to that point, that's your review. Like, the game was so not enjoyable to you that you couldn't even finish it,
I mean,
Um
me and you both said that on the podcast with certain
right.
games, that we couldn't, we put 10 hours into it, we put 15 hours into it, and we're like, all right, because actually remember we had this discussion before with Monster Hunter, because remember
Mhm.
Monster Hunter used to get terrible reviews
Mm,
because people couldn't put that extra 15 or
effort.
20 hours into it to,
Yeah.
yeah, the effort to actually learn the game and learn when to dodge and when not to dodge, learn different, attack cues and all that other stuff like that, um how the game is meant to be played. And I remember we had this discussion a long time ago,
Mhm.
um but it looks like it's coming back in fruition because like in full circle rather, because I think Elden Ring and these reviews and that embargo limit is really, it's a really toxic system. I don't know how we solve it. Maybe some bigger people need to talk about it besides us. But I think it's really toxic. I think it's toxic for the reviewers. It's toxic for the players. It's toxic for the game. I think
Yeah.
this is all around toxic.
Agreed. Yeah, because I don't think you're getting opinions in a natural, organic environment.
hmm
You're getting them almost like on an assembly line.
Yeah.
in the sense that they're trying to do it as efficiently as possible. Like people are playing 80 hours in a fucking like 6-day window, and they're playing like fucking 14 hours a day. That is unhealthy, dude. Like that is not healthy for anyone to do that. And then to try to put out a 30-minute video on the game or write an article trying to boil your thoughts down into it. Like, dude, oh my god, that sounds awful. Like I would not be able to put my thoughts coherently into anything if I was doing that. It's just not healthy, dude. Like, so I don't know. I think what it really is going to take, the only thing that's really going to change it is people approach it differently, like different influencers like us, for instance, right? We don't review games like that. We review games over time, over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks as we're playing them. We give our thoughts as we play, so you guys can see how we feel the further we play, like go with a game,
Hmm.
and I'm sure that's an interesting progression sometimes, and then other times, I'm sure you guys are like, God, they're talking about this game again. Like when we talked about Monster Hunter World Iceborne for like 5 episodes in a row for like 2 hours an episode. Yeah, I'm sure that I'm sure sometimes it's a little much, but at the same time, though, it's like we're trying to give you as complete a picture of how we feel about the game as possible.
Hmm.
The games we play. So I don't know. I think the current system's a little rough, but another side piece of this conversation, though, something else you wrote down here is, and this is another interesting like discussion point, because suddenly, right, this game Elden Ring, right, this is the game to save all video games, right? This is like the equivalent of Jesus coming down, during the rapture, and everybody's going up to heaven or whatever, right? Like that's what Elden Ring is to the people who have been hyped for it. And then suddenly the game journalists are on board, right? Like everybody's giving this game a 10, 9, 9.8, 9.99 out of 100, like it's one of the fucking best games ever made. Everybody's saying it's like the greatest game of all time. And it's like all of a sudden now there's like anybody who's like skeptical, there's like this defense brigade online coming after people for going after these journalists when normally we fucking hate these guys. Like, what is going on here? There's like this weird, like, there's this weird confirmation bias thing happening where, like, oh, the journalists agree with me about the game that I'm really hyped about that I haven't played yet. Oh, well, they're cool now, until next week when, they say something woke. It's like, it's really, really fucking weird. And I don't know. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I feel like it's it's one of those things I never. I mean, I thought about it, and I do it all the time actually. And it's pretty fucking weird. Well, I don't do it all the time. I catch myself doing it. I'm like, oh man, this game got really good reviews. Wait, I just said I hated those people like last week or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Over the last couple of years since I've actually been doing the podcast, I would say since the last 3 years we've been doing the podcast, I've actually been consciously catching myself not like that's why I go
Yeah.
dark on games now and I just play the game myself.
Yeah.
But before the podcast, like it was like, up in the air or whatever and everything of that nature.
Well,
And
yeah. Were you finding that you were being influenced by other people's opinions on it,
yeah,
on games? Yeah.
100%. Uh I think Mass Effect 3 was one of those games. I remember
Mm,
me and DJ had a heavy conversation about that. Whereas I thought I didn't say Mass Effect 3 was terrible. Well, yeah, I did say Mass Effect 3 was terrible. I thought it was the worst one in the series because of the fucking ending. And that was the general sentiment around that game. Anyway,
yeah.
it's the worst one. But I did a replay of it, and I actually really enjoyed Mass Effect 3. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, the ending's still fucking stupid, but it's like I enjoyed the ride to the end, um, or whatever the case may be. So I say that to say, like, with these games, like with Elden Ring, or with all we hate or a lot of people, a lot of these gamers, especially since GamerGate, like people hate the journalists, right? But then when the journalists do confirm their bias, whether it be a Pokemon game, like we do, oh, that's a perfect example. Call of Duty. Like it consecutively in Madden. You remember Madden and Call of Duty used to get consecutive nines, eights and nines. People are like, oh man, you guys
Yeah.
are in EA's pockets or in Activision's pockets or whatever. And then say like I don't know. I'm just gonna say a random game, even though I don't know the score. Let's say like Devil May Cry 5 or DMC 5 comes out, or yeah, Devil May Cry 4 comes out, and it gets like a 7. It's like, oh, this game's way better than or Bayonetta comes out, it gets a 7. Like, oh, you
Yeah.
journalists couldn't complete it, that's why, or Cuphead or whatever. These games did not get 7s. I'm just saying. Uh, this game's way better than Call of Duty or whatever the case may be. And then like, oh, see, that's that wokeism, or EA has you in their pocket type shit or whatever. Um, and I feel like people are doing it with Elden Ring. Like,
Yeah.
since this is the most anticipated game in forever, in a while, I'll say probably since Cyberpunk. This has been one of the most
Yeah.
anticipated games.
Definitely.
Um, it confirmed their bias. Whereas with like even with Cyberpunk, we did it right. Like I was skeptical from the get go. Like
Hmm.
but I remember everyone else was like, "Yo, the reviewers are saying Cyberpunk is it, man. They got the review in progress. They say this is the game to get." And like, cause a lot of people were doing reviews in progress, which is really weird for that game. Well, now
Yep.
we know why, but it was really weird at the time, and everybody was on board with it because it was CD Projekt Red. They released Witcher 3, critically acclaimed, and everybody loves CD Projekt Red. They could do no wrong, and it confirmed they're biased. Whereas
Hmm.
like Call of Duty, that gets a 9 or 10, which may be a legitimate 9 of a game because people who like Call of Duty would be like, I like Call of Duty. But like gamers like us or whatever, who are like still on the fence about the Call of Duty franchise, well, it always gets a 9 every year. That's because it's Activision has it in their pockets, and you guys didn't really review the game, and blah 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 blah. Blah. So it's like
Yeah.
I just thought it was very apparent
Hmm.
with Elden Ring. Like
Agreed.
very even even not Elden Ring, even Pokemon, the new Pokemon game. I can't remember the name.
Arceus.
Arceus. I can't pronounce the name for some reason.
Yeah.
Um, Arceus. I remember people were retweeting and sharing and video putting
Hmm.
video blogs up about the scores in that game and everything of that nature. And it's like, okay, I
Yeah.
guess, but y'all are
Well,
just mad at them because y'all like 5 or 10 years
yeah.
ago when they said they gave Pokemon Diamond and Pearl a fucking 8 or a 7 because it said too much water.
Too much. Yeah. Too
Yeah,
much water. Yeah.
yeah. So
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, this speaks to a weird thing I think that I've noticed with people online that has become a real trend that's really annoying where I kind of hate this behavior too. It really gets on my nerves where like the confirmation bias stuff where like people are online right now this second. You can go on Twitter and find it. Just go search for Elden Ring. You'll find threads. Um where they are arguing about whether or not a game that they've never played is a 10 or not. Like they might have played the network, maybe they played the network test or whatever, but like they haven't played like the full experience, right? Like they're arguing about a game they haven't experienced. Like this is like the point about the confirmation bias. Is like you're going into the game with this preconceived notion that Elden Ring is going to be amazing. And then when the media comes out and says, "Oh my god, this game is amazing. This is the best game of all time." That confirms your inherent bias. You're like, "Oh, okay. I'm fucking right. I knew it. I knew this game was going to be the greatest game of all time." So then you play it and you're like you're the whole time you're like, "Oh, this is the greatest game of all time." Even like it doesn't matter what blemishes the game seems to have. So then like this whole discussion, like the whole thing is just confirming your own bias. Everything, like the whole process confirms your whole bias. Like whereas I feel like me and you, like we don't. I don't approach games like that. I have expectations for games, sure, assuredly, absolutely, like a level of quality that I expect from a game. But I don't go into any game believing that it's going to be the best game ever or the worst game ever, or even anywhere in that like level of extreme part of the spectrum. Like I go into every game like I don't necessarily know what I'm going to expect here. Like I don't know how good this game is going to be, and I want to play it to see how it is. It's like because Pokemon, that's what happened with Pokemon for me. I got curious about it when I wasn't interested in it because of all the hype. I needed to know for myself, like, is this hype real? Is this game actually this good, or is it not? And honestly, I played the game and I'm like, I it's a good game, but it's not anywhere near like the hype level, you know? And I'm like, that
Hmm.
wasn't born of any expectation I had though. I just played it and made my own decision about that, you know? Like I formed my own opinion about it. And I think this speaks to a problem that has really formed in society, American society, especially, where I feel like people don't want to think for themselves anymore, you know? Like they're not going deep and thinking about these things on their own, you know? And it's like it's really frustrating to see because you get the tribalism, then you get the fighting against other groups of people who have differing opinions from you, and it's just this vicious cycle that repeats over and over and over again, and it's so super exhausting. And I'm tired of it, and I wish more people listen to us, because I just want to urge you to, like, guys, like, when you play a game, just uh examine it and evaluate it on its own merits, not some preconceived notion you have, not comparing it to some other game that you played that it reminds you of. Play it and evaluate it for its own merits, the game's own merits. This is why me and Montrell often have dissenting opinions from the mainstream on a lot of games, because I don't I don't like look at a like game like Breath of the Wild and I'm like, "Ooh, it's Zelda. It's fun because it's Zelda." No, like there's nothing, like, yes, I have feelings about Zelda, and some of them are positive and some of them are negative, but that has nothing to do with any individual Zelda game and how it is, you know, and like how good it is, how fun it is, how well designed it is, you know? Like it really has no bearing for the most part on it. So, it's like you evaluate the game within that individual sphere of that game, you know? So,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just I think we need a shake up of how we do things,
Yeah.
and we're not going to get that kind of crash. The only way we can get that kind of crash, I thought it would happen with Cyberpunk. I thought people would have changed the way they approach video games, and we have people are a little bit more cautious and everything of that nature. But the pre-ordering hasn't stopped, and tons of people still pre-order, Elden Ring, and if Bloodborne 2 was announced tomorrow, tons of people would still, pre-order that. So it's
Mhm.
like, and you can say like, oh well, Montreux, these are two different companies, and it's like, I understand like From Software hasn't burned anybody.
Mhm.
Um, but
Right.
at the same time, like we'd still set that precedence for for these companies to just do that to us, and even for these reviewers to just
Yeah.
make tons of it. Like, man, I think one of the most like I'm not going to say his name, but one YouTuber in general who was just riding Cyberpunk's nuts to the ground. Like, he should have been arrested for all the illegal dick riding he was doing for
Yeah.
Cyberpunk. He
You need to tell me who it is after the show. I
Okay,
think I know, but I'm curious who it is.
yeah, I'm not going to mention his name, but like that was his whole platform. Like, he had news every week about Cyberpunk. Oh, Cyberpunk this, Cyberpunk that, and then it came out, and then he, in my opinion, got no consequences to his actions for that. He was just, in my opinion, he was part of that hype culture and part of the deceitful nature of deceiving players and setting this expectation for this game as CD Projekt Red themselves. Not to the He didn't make the game, but he pushed that narrative of the game,
Mhm.
and he got no flack for it. Like, there was just no consequences to his actions. He continued to do shit. He did it with Elden Ring, in my opinion, and there's no consequences
Mm.
behind it.
Mhm.
So, um, I don't know, man. Like, it seems like everyone got off scot free with Cyberpunk. We all pushed the thing on
Yeah.
CD Projekt
Well,
Red,
even
which
CD Projekt got off scot free because, dude, they released the next gen patch last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, and
and
man,
it's still buggy.
yeah, and people are now evangelizing the game. They're like, oh, this is the game, man. This is the game, guys. This is the game we were promised. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, this is where it's dangerous to me, man. These hype cycles is FromSoft is a perfect example of this, because they've made a certain type of game for the last 10, 15 years in the Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Sekiro,
Hmm.
Bloodborne style game, Elden Ring now. And they were known for something totally different back in the day. And we just found out a few weeks ago, they might be working on an Armor Core game.
Yep.
And whatever that game is, people are going to go into it with expectations that might not match the game that we get, you know?
Yeah. And
Because
that's
Armor Core
totally
is a
unfair.
very specific thing compared to it's a specific thing in the way that Dark Souls is a very specific thing, you know.
Hmm.
But I don't know if it has the appeal of the specific thing that Dark Souls is, you know.
Hmm.
So I like worry that the hype cycle is gonna eat that game alive, you know,
It,
whatever that
and,
game is, and it
and
could ruin a
unfortunately,
franchise, you know.
yeah, and unfortunately, that's what I'm scared of, and that's why when it was announced, I was so scared. I read the comments and I was like, "This is exactly what the fuck I was scared of." I am a dark. I would consider myself a Dark Souls fanboy because I was trying to tell DJ to play. Dark. I was trying to tell everybody I knew, yo, you gotta play Dark Souls. You gotta play Dark Souls. And so it just so happened that DJ played Demon Souls beforehand, but he didn't know it was the same developers. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
but yeah, so it was like I was a Dark Souls fanboy, and even me, right? I played Armor Core, and I didn't know the developers were from Soft. I was just like, yo, Armor Core is the shit. Like I love Armor Core. And then I
Yeah.
looked at it one day. I was actually playing Armor Core 4 or 5. I think it was 4 that came out on the 360, and it said
Hmm.
from software. I'm like, huh? I didn't know they've been making Armor Core games. And I went back and was like, holy shit, they have. And I was
Yeah.
like, yo, they made also made Dark Souls or whatever. So uh when I read the comments about that from that Armor Core game that's supposedly coming out or whatever, and people were like, "Yo, oh man, I wish they'll make it. I hope they make it like Dark Souls, a Dark Souls mech game." I was like, "No, please God, no." Everybody get this expectation out your head. And the simple fact that the article said it might be Dark Souls like, oh, it might be Dark Souls like, from the creators of Soulsborne, from the creators of the Soulsborne franchise. And I'm like, don't say that. Like saying shit like that puts this expectation that it's gonna be like that. I've gotten out that
Hmm.
trap to where a developer will say from Sonic Team or something like that. I'm trying to think of a game where they did that shit where they're like from the creators of this, and then I get the game I got is not what I got because it's not like the old game that I expected it to be like.
Hmm.
Um, I just really stay away from that because they do that
I
shit
mean,
in anime all the
indie
time.
devs do that all the time, dude. I think when like we talk about indie devs spinning up and they spin off of like a AAA studio where like oh, this is a team that's got like ex Blizzard developers and ex
Mm,
fucking BioWare developers that worked on like Knights of the Old Republic and Mass Effect, and we get these like expectations in our head that they're gonna make one of those kinds of games when they're not making that at all,
yeah,
you know.
exactly. Like for
Um,
instance, that team that spun off from BioWare, they're making a survival game, and we're like, well, what the fuck? Like
yeah,
both me and
right.
you're like, yo, what the fuck? Um, yeah, yeah, you're right. Like I think and that's not as much as our fault as the people announcing it. And I understand they gotta use their credentials somewhere because anime does it all the time. I think Soul Eater was one of the games, or not games, but one of the animes I watched. And the only reason I watched it is because like, oh, it was like it's from the animators of fucking Cowboy Bebop, and it's
Hmm.
like I was like, oh, cool. So is it gonna be like Cowboy Bebop, like the mood? And Soul Eater is definitely not the mood of Cowboy Bebop, but I still love Soul Eater. But they're talking about in terms of like animation. So now when I hear, okay, well, the same studio that's making Attack on Titan is making this new anime or whatever. I don't go by like, oh, is it gonna be like Attack on Titan? I go by like, okay, the quality of the
The
anime.
animation, yeah, the
Yeah,
animation
the animation
style
quality.
or quality, yeah, might
Yeah,
be like
exactly.
Attack on
And
Titan. Right.
I think that's probably how we should start going with like games as well. Like the
Mm.
polish or whatever the game. Like from software's
Mechanics or
games.
something, yeah, right.
Yeah. Even
Yeah.
even mechanics could be totally different though, right?
True. Yeah.
So it's like I would just say like maybe like the care that the games have. Like, Mass Effect and Jade Empire and Couture and fucking Dragon Age have a certain level of care, and
Hmm.
like maybe that new story survival game that's or that new survival game coming out may have that same level of care and detail. It may not have the mechanics that we want, but it has that same level of detail. Even as bad as a game as it was, right? Anthem had that same level of detail in it. Whereas
Hmm.
like they had super fucking lore everywhere. You're like, yo, like
Yeah.
this lore Anthem was like actually really fucking cool. And like the wars that you went through that you played through in the missions or whatever that was like simulated or whatever. I just remember that part and I'm like, yo, this lore is actually pretty fucking dope.
Right.
And all the collectibles and stuff. So like you can see their level of care. And I think From Software would they actually do that with their games as well. One thing they do is item description, because each level of items, right, in Armor Core has like, oh, this company made this in the development with this and this and and you're like, what? Like that's a
Yeah.
lot of
Right.
lore, right? On
Yeah.
that one
Right.
little fucking missile launcher pod that I want to
Yep.
put because it looks really cool on my robot. And Dark Souls does the same thing. You get like fucking shoulders of or a Phantomon, and you're like, oh, shoulders of Phantomon. What was that for? And in the land of Phantomon. It's like, wow, that's a lot of fucking lore just for these fucking shoulders I found on the fucking skull. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, it's just certain things you gotta tune your brains out, or you gotta, you know, pick up on certain things. But unfortunately, since I've been around in the video game spectrum for so long, I know how to pick up on that. Whereas with younger viewers and younger
Mm-hmm.
gamers and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
they haven't picked up on that at
Yep.
all yet. And I just think it sets a very dangerous precedence to do the comparison thing, to do uh
Hype.
yeah, the hype culture and everything like that. It just we really need to reset as far as like media wise, and I think journalists need to be more honest. I think players themselves should be honest as well. Like it's not just all on the journalists. I'm not going to put all that on them. I think players themselves should be more disciplined in the way they handle gaming and the games they've been looking forward to and everything of that nature. Because trust me,
Right.
I get it. You've been looking forward to Mario Strikers, but what if you play it and it's not like the Mario Strikers that you played previously? You know what I'm
Yep.
saying?
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I mean the reason this matters is that game companies, publishers, they pick up on these trends, man. Um, the marketing departments on these companies, guys, are taking advantage of you when you hype their game for them. Like you're doing their job for them, when you're hyping their game for them. Like, and same with the media. When they send these games out early, this is my problem with the embargo system is that it's like a hype cycle generator where they're so frantic to meet this like fucking deadline and like it makes me wonder how many of them ever sit down and ask themselves, why am I trying to meet this embargo, it's
hmm
like, and I mean, sure, I'm sure most of them would answer that it's so that they can, be be a part of the zeitgeist and b like be part of get there first, so you're not like lost. You want to be one of the first ones out there with an opinion.
hmm
But to me, that's not important. I think the last 10 years in the game industry, if it's proven anything, it's that people will be willing to wait for your opinion if they're a fan of you. Like it that like that's it, dude. Like I don't need the opinion on day one. Like why does it matter? I just want to know what your thoughts are. Like if I'm following somebody, like I actually listen to their show or something, like I don't care that they meet the embargo. I actually don't want them to because it's unhealthy. I don't want them to fucking kill themselves to do that. Like it's so I'm gonna get the opinion eventually. Like I'd rather just get it. At some point than like try to meet some arbitrary fucking deadline to do it. And I'd rather get a more organic opinion out of them too.
yeah,
So I
exactly.
don't know. It's like a whole everybody's implicated here. It's the publishers are implicated, the media and influencers are implicated, but the gamers are implicated as well. Like that's the reason why it's so hard to change, I think, is because there's so many facets to it. But I don't know. I mean, it's worth discussing. I think this was a good conversation about it.
Yeah, I just say
Um,
like one thing.
yeah.
I think one YouTuber does a really good job at reviewing games, and I love his reviews on games. And these are like fucking old games. Like I think his name's Rayovic or something like that.
Oh, Racevic.
Racevic. Um, he goes through the games in a detail-oriented manner in which some of the games I haven't even played, and I go back and I play. I'm like, wow, he would, that's a really detailed or like a really detailed account. Where I played the games before, and I'm like, I just want to see his opinion on the game that I've already played and beaten before, you know. And I think
Hmm.
that's really cool because you get different perspectives on how players have played the games as time progressed. And I remember he played like Mass Effect or something like that, like 5 years after its release, and and then he gave a totally different perspective. Some of the perspectives were my perspective, but then he gave some different opinions on it. And it wasn't obviously the game already came out 5 years ago, so he wasn't rushing to get some kind of embargo or views or clicks. I got the clicks because I strictly wanted his opinion, and it was like an honest opinion. I don't know how I explain it, but it's like a really, really honest opinion or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, and I
I
think you get better insight in that situation.
yeah.
When everybody's rushing to review, that kind of it's almost incestuous in a way because they're all in the same situation, right? Which you if you pay attention, like you follow some of these guys, they do say that they were talking to each other about Elden Ring, like that while they were in the review period, this embargo period. So like there is probably some incestuousness with the opinions as well, like kind of like um going between each other,
Hmm.
so I don't know. I do think something needs to change. I think it's happening slowly on the fringes of game coverage, in certain spheres where it's not so important to meet any kind of embargo or anything like that. But um, I don't know. I wouldn't encourage it, guys. That's what I guess that's ultimately my takeaway. It's just like um, it it's
Well,
I don't think hyping games like this is healthy for the industry.
yeah, it's not because for me, like I look at games too, right? Where I review, I look at reviews as also like a not even a confirmation bias, but like I can't be the only one thinking this type deal, right? So I would play a game, and sometime when I after I play the game, I'll go back and watch the review after I've beaten it, and I
Mhm.
see someone else's review and like, what did they think about it? Because I need to know like I'm not crazy that this mechanic is like wild or it's super good or it's like super fucking bad or something like that, right? And
Yeah.
like sometimes the reviewers will say like, "Hey, this mechanic, I didn't really like it," or I did like it," or in some cases, which in many cases they don't even talk about it because they've been trying to blow past the game for so fast, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, I agree. Something has to change in the long run, but I don't know if we're ever going to get there. Something catastrophic has to happen, like Elden Ring has to fail or some shit like that, which
No,
is not
we
going to
need to
happen.
get popular, Montreal. That's what
Yeah,
needs to happen. And then we'll change everybody's minds. How about that?
yeah.
Let's do it. All right. Well, that was a good discussion. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I think we haven't had a long form topic like that in a little while, so
Hmm.
that was definitely fun. So we're gonna end it here, though. If you like this episode, please like the episode, review the show, and subscribe to the show, whatever feed you are listening to it on. And please share it with your friends so that we can change the video game industry together. If you'd like to interact with us on Twitter, you can do so at iTrap for the Hokage for Montrell. That is the number 4, not the word. I'm at Thunder.01, and the show is at the Players Take. If you'd like to send us an email, you can do so at the Players on Twitter, or you can send us an email to the Players Take 01 at gmail.com. All right, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next week. Bye.